We begin today the Gemara on the very last line of Daf Pei Gimel Amud Beis, where it says Va'af Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi. The Gemara here before brought the story of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar that went out to catch Ganovim, thieves and Rishayim, and he informed them and gave them over to the government. And then there was a story where there was one launderer that he gave over to the government, and then that launderer was hung. And he felt very bad about it. And then later on it says how he realized he did the right thing, and he even made a test to make sure that he did the right thing. He took out fats from his body and put it out into the sun to see if the fats would create any bad odor. And he saw that no, it didn't, and it was for him a sign that what he did was absolutely right. Okay, so the continuation of this story of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar is going to come on Daf Pei Daled Amud Beis. But in between, the Gemara makes a break with what we find regarding another Amayre or another Tana and other stories related to this. So the Gemara continues, Va'af Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi also did something similar to Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Mata kihai maisel yode. It came to him also a similar kind of thing, which is that he went out to catch Ganovim, the thieves, and give them over to the government. So Pagabe Eliyahu encountered Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi Amalei, and he asks Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi, At Mosai, at Meiser, Amay Shal Elkeinu La'ariga. Until when are you going to give over the nation of Hashem to the government, that they kill these Ganovim that you're giving to them? Amalei, so Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi answered, My Avid, what should I do? Harmana Damalkuhu. This is the command of the king that he told me to do. I have no choice. And this was different than Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Shimon ben Elazar, if you remember the story before, he got himself involved in this because he met the police and he gave them good advice, and then because of this, he was told to do it himself. But over here, Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi was commanded to do this, so he said, I have no choice. Amalei, so Rabbi Eliyahu Navi tells him, Avuch arak la'asya. Your father, when he was in such a kind of situation, he ran away to a far place, Asya. So you as well, aroik lulutkia. Run away to Lutkia, and over there you won't have to do this. Now the Gemara here says about these two Tanoim, Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi, and who we spoke about before, Rabbi Elazar bar Rabbi Shimon. So ki have a Mekali, Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi, Rabbi Elazar bar Rabbi Shimon bahadi adadi. When Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi and Rabbi Elazar bar Rabbi Shimon would meet one another, and they would be standing facing one another. So here the Gemara tells us that their bodies were so large that when they were standing facing each other, Hava'ayil bakre de ture benayu. A pair of oxen was able to go between them beneath their bellies. That's how large they were. V'loi have nagabuhu, and these oxen would not touch their body. So it says here in the Mefarshim that this is an exaggeration. You find sometimes the Chazal uses these kinds of things as an exaggeration. But what it's saying is that they were very large, and as the Gemara brought before regarding the fats of the body of Rabbi Elazar bar Rabbi Shimon, and here it says that the same was with Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi. Yeah, this is the son of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Yeah. So Amra Luhu Ahui Ahi Matronisa. So there was this noblewoman that commented to them and said to them, because of their large body size, B'neichem einam shalchem. Your sons are not your sons, because it's impossible for you with like this to have any marital relation, so this is not your son. Amrullah, so they responded to her and said, Shalahan gadol mishalanu. Our wives, their size is even larger than ours. Okay, so she said, if so, kol shekain. If so, definitely, there's no way that you can give birth to any children. Okay, so now what they meant to say is, if she's larger than us, and the fact is that she gave birth, so even if you're going to say she didn't give birth from us, because it's impossible, but she gave birth from someone, but then they asked, but how is it possible? So they answered and they said, Ikeda Amri. Some say that what they answered is, Hachi Amrullah. This is what they told her. The pasuk says, Ki ish gvurase, like a man with his might. This is the might of a man with the Hever. He's able to do the mitzvah, and he's able to have children. It is possible. Ikeda Amri, and others say, Hachi Amrullah. This is what they said to her, Ave de chekes es habasar. Love squeezes the flesh, and therefore it is possible for us to have children. This Gemara here is a pella. The Gemara is discussing this matter So this is in the Chedushim of the goddess of the Maharal in Prague. So he says in this Gemara that the Gemara is talking over here about the union between a ish v'isha, which also refers beruchnius to the union that there is Shem Yudke. It says in the Gemara that the ish has the letter Yud in it, and the isha has the letter Hey in it, which is the union between ish and the isha, which also goes on the Yidden and the Eibishter. He doesn't bring this point of the Eibishter that it's a mashal for there, but he says that the Gemara is talking about holy things, about the kedusha, the connection that there is between the ish and the isha, and Chassidus. In Chassidus, it talks about the connection that is between the ish and the isha, and you have the connection when it comes mulmaila from the ish, from the Eibishter. That's the gvura that comes from above, and then there is the connection that comes from below, from the Isha, that the Yid has to squeeze himself to connect to the Eibishter. This lashon of the Gemara here, Ava de Chekes Sabasar, is an expression that the Alter Rebbe actually brings in Tanya. In Perik Mem Tes, we're going to learn it now in the end of this week. We're going to learn Perik Mem Tes, where the Alter Rebbe talks about the Ava of Kamayim Aponim Laponim, which we're learning about in Tanya now. And there the Alter Rebbe says that for a Yid to express his love for Hashem, he has to squeeze his own flesh and put aside his own desires in order to be able to connect to Hashem. That's really what this Gemara is talking about over there. Okay, now the Gemara says, why did they even have to respond to her questions? It says, don't answer a fool according to his foolishness. So they let them ignore her questions. So the Gemara says, they only answer so there shouldn't be any bad rumors about their children, because she asked such a question. Rabbi Yechanan said, Eiverei de Rabbi Shmuel. So the taich of Eiverei, in the Rishayim here, it says this refers to the biceps, or maybe the knees, but that's the taich that it says over here in the Ritva. But in the simple pshat of the Gemara, in continuation to what it says before, it seems like it's referring over here to the point that we're talking about before, marital relations, the Eiver for marital relations. And here the Gemara says like this: of Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yasi, kechemas bas tisha kabin. It's like the size of a barrel of 9 kav. Amar Rav Papa, and then Rav Papa said, Eiverei de Rabbi Yechanan. By Rabbi Yechanan was kechemas bas chameshes kabin. It's like a barrel that contains in it 5 kav. Others say that a barrel is just containing it 3 kavin. The Rav Papa Gufer, Rav Papa himself, that spoke about Rabbi Yechanan, ki dikuri da harpanoi. It's like the size of the baskets that they make in the place harpanoi. So again over here on this, the Maral explains that the main point the Gemara is trying to point out over here is, if the Eiver is referring to the Indian that we're talking about before, Benegay to marital relations, that a person shouldn't make the mistake and think to himself that this is a despicable act. Adarabbe, it's an Inyan Kodesh. We're talking about great Tanoim and Amiroim that were very holy, and their bodies were just one piece of holiness. And therefore the Gemara is trying to point out how great these Tanoim were, and everything in their body was absolute purity, and everything they did expressed that purity. And he explains over there, the different shiurim the Gemara gives there are not just random. It all expresses the shleimus of the level of their kedusha that they were on and everything that they did. Amar Rabbi Yechanan. Rabbi Yechanan said, Ana ishtayri mishapire Yerushalayim. I am the one that's left over from the most beautiful ones of the city of Yerushalayim. Which means that he was pashat physically very beautiful. And Haiman, the boy Machse Shipure Shufre de Rabbi Yechanan, one that wants to see the great beauty of Rabbi Yechanan, Naisi Kisse de Kasma mi Beis Alki. Let him bring a silver vessel that's coming right from the silversmith, that when it's fresh, it has some kind of sparkle to it, or it still has some very, very beautiful. And then, v'nemalye partsidie, the rumne sumke, fill it with the red seeds of the pomegranate. And then after that, v'nahadele klila devar de sumke lepume, then surround it with red, beautiful roses around the lip of this vessel. And then v'noisve b'shimshelatula, put it outside between the shine, the place where it's sunny and a place where it's shady. And harhu sahar hururi, that light and shine that you see from this beautiful silver vessel with the roses and the pomegranate seeds, me'en shufre de Rabbi Yechanan. This is somewhat of the beauty of Rabbi Yechanan that you'll see. The Gemara, No, Rabbi Yechanan. This is later Rabbi Yechanan. So the Gemara asks him this, Eini, is this true that Rabbi Yechanan was so beautiful? But Va'amamar, the master said that there's others that we find were beautiful. Shufre de Rav Kahana, the beauty of Rav Kahana was Me'en Shufre de Rabavo, was somewhat of the beauty of Rabavo. Shufre de Rabavo, now the beauty of Rabavo was Me'en Shufre de Yaakov Avinu. That was somewhat like the beauty of Yaakov Avinu. Shufre de Yaakov Avinu, and the beauty of Yaakov Avinu was Me'en Shufre de Adam Rishon, was somewhat of the beauty of Adam Rishon. But Ve'ilu Rabbi Yechanan like a chashavle. when we speak here about these various different Amiroim here that had this beauty, it doesn't mention Rabbi Yechanan in this. So it seems like Rabbi Yechanan didn't have this beauty. So the Gemara answers, the reason why it doesn't mention Rabbi Yechanan, Shani Rabbi Yechanan, the Hadras Panim Lehavile, because he didn't have a Hadras Panim, and Rashi says this refers to a beard. Because he didn't have a beard, so therefore it doesn't mention him here in this beauty. Now the Gemara says about Rabbi Yechanan, because of the beauty that he had, Rabbi Yechanan have a ozel v'yosef ashari tefillah. Rabbi Yechanan would go and sit by the entrance of the place of the mikveh, where the women would go to the mikveh, and he would sit there, and so they should see him when they come out. And Omar, he said, Kisalkim b'nais Yisrael mit tefillas mitzvah. When the women come out from the place of the mikveh, so lifko bi, let them see me first. So that they look at my image, and then that's the image that they have in their heads. So they should have beautiful children like me, and they should have children that will learn Torah like me. So I'm going to let Rabbanon. The Rabbanon asked Rabbi Yechanan, you're sitting here, and all the women come out and look at you. You're not afraid of any ayin hara, from a bad eye? So he said, no, I'm not afraid. I know Mizara the Yosef Kasina. I come from Yosef Atzadik, the Leishalta Be'ene Bisha. There's no bad eye that can have any bad effect on him. The pasuk says, Ben Peiris Yosef, Ben Peiris Alei Ayin. By Aliyayin literally means by the stream of by a wellspring of water. But Vamer Rabavo explained, Al Tikra Alei Ayin Ela Oile Ayin. He goes above the eyes, meaning even the bad eyes, he rises above this, and no bad eye could have any effect on him. And that's who I'm a descendant of. Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina said, Mehacha, he brought the following pasuk that it says, V'yidgul l'roiv b'kerev ha'aretz, the bracha of Yaakov, that they'll multiply like the fish that are here. Ma dogn shebiyam, just like the fish in the water. Mayim chasam ma'isam, the water covers them. Ve'ein ha'ayin sheletes b'hem, and there's no eyes that see them, and therefore there's no ayin hara on them. Av zara shel Yosef, ein ha'ayin sheletes b'hem. So too, the descendants of Yosef, there's no ayin hara upon them. Another story that happened now to Rabbi Yechanan because of his beauty. Yom Echad, one day, Havakasachi Rabbi Yechanan b'Yarden. Rabbi Yechanan was bathing in the Yarden River. Chazi Reish Lakish saw him. Now, Reish Lakish at that time was the head of the thieves. He was very physically strong, and he was then the head of the thieves. And he saw Rabbi Yechanan in the Yarden, and Rabbi Yechanan was extremely beautiful. V'shaver liyarden abasrei. He jumped into the Yarden River to go towards Rabbi Yechanan. Amalei, Rabbi Yechanan saw how Reish Lakish jumped in with such might to come after him. So he says to him, Cheilach la'iraisa. Your power that Hashem gave you should be utilized for learning Torah. Right, so here you see the Rebbe brings this. This is a lashon that's brought many times. Cheilach la'iraisa. When a person sees that he has power, so instead of using your power for negative things, to transform it and elevate it, he tells them it should be used for Torah. Amalei shufrach lenashi. So Reish Lakish responds to Rabbi Yechanan and says, and your beauty is for women. Amalei, so Rabbi Yechanan says to Reish Lakish, Ihadresbach, if you're going to do tshuva and come learn Torah, I will give you to marry my sister, the Shapira Minoi, and she's even more beautiful than me. Based on the expression of the Gemara here, Hadrisbach, Taisva says that Reish Lakish actually did learn Torah before, and he just went away from Torah, and now he came and he told him, if you do tshuva, that's what the Gemara uses the term, Hadrisbach, that's Taisva's pshat here. Kabbalah Aleh, he accepted it upon himself immediately to follow and do this. Now after he accepted this, he wanted to now jump out of the Yarden River to go take his clothing, and he didn't have the same power he had before, he wasn't able. So now what that means is, as soon as he accepted upon himself the yoke of Torah, so then his energy that he had to jump out that way, he was already given away to Torah. And the Torah weakens a person, matesha. So what happened? Hada akre va'asne. So then Rabbi Yechanan learned with him Torah, Kriya, the Chumash, and then he learned with him the Mishnayos, and then V'shavya Gavre Rabbe. He turned Reish Lakish into a very great person in learning Torah. Yom Echad, one day, have a miflagi bei medrasha. They were arguing, Rabbi Yechanan and Reish Lakish were arguing Bismedish. You have in the Gemara all the time the arguments between Rabbi Yechanan and Reish Lakish. So here one day they were arguing in Bismedish, and the argument was regarding the following din: Hasayif, a sword, or a sakin, a knife, a pigyon, or a dagger, a spear, or magal yad, a sickle that's used in the holding the hand, magel kotzer, a harvest sickle. All of these metal utensils, me'emesai mekablen tumah. From what point are they, when they're being created? At what point is it a finished product that is considered to be a keli that's susceptible to tumah? Just any piece of metal that's not a keli is not yet mekabel tumah. So at what point is it a finished product? Mishas gemar malachta. So when it's finished, when it's done. But u'me'emesai gemar malachta. When is it considered to be a finished product? Rabbi Yochanan, when it's fired in the furnace, as soon as you take it out of the furnace, it's already done. Rish Lakish says, no, that's not enough. Only after you rinse it in cold water, that's what strengthens and hardens it. So Amalei, when Rabbi Yochanan heard that Rish Lakish was arguing with him and he gave his opinion about this, so he said, Lista, belista yada. The thief in the tools of what he uses for his thievery, he knows better than me. Because you were a thief and therefore you used a knife and a sword and all these things, so you know exactly when it's done, when it's good to use. That's what he commented to him. So Amalei, the Shlokish says back to him, well, Maya, honestly, what benefit were you for me? Hasam Rebbe Karile. Then when I was a thief, I was referred to as the Rebbe, as the master, because he was the head of the thieves. And Hacha Rebbe Karile. And now they refer to me as a Rebbe as well, because I teach Torah. But then I was a head, and now I'm a head, so what am I gaining here? Amalei, so Rabbi Yochanan says to him, what the benefit that I brought to you is, that I brought you under the wings of the Shechina. So the Maral on this explains also, Rish Lakish wasn't in any way trying to say that I didn't gain anything now by the fact that I came to learn Torah. But what he's telling Rabbi Yochanan was, when I came to learn Torah, I didn't come to learn Torah for any benefit that I get from it. Chazal say, mitzvahs la'av lahanisnet. You do mitzvahs, it's not for your own gain. So you think that what you did is something that I gain? You brought me in here, and there's no benefit, pleasure that I have from this. This is all I accepted upon myself, the yoke of heaven. So I don't have any benefit in that sense from you. And Rabbi Yochanan answered him, true, if it was just 1 or 2 or 3 mitzvahs that you did, you could say this. But the fact that I changed your entire life around and I brought you to Kamfi Shechina, so that is considered to be a hana that you have from me. Now, Chalash Daite, that Rabbi Yochanan was sort of offended. He felt very bad about what Rish Lakish said to him, that you're not any benefit to me. And as a result of this, Chalash Rish Lakish. So Rish Lakish became very ill because Rabbi Yochanan was very makbid. He was very upset about what Rish Lakish said. And Rish Lakish was so ill that his life was in danger. Asoi Achsei Sanar, Rabbi Yochanan's sister, which is the wife of Rish Lakish, and came to Rabbi Yochanan, Kabach, she was crying. Amrale, she says to Rabbi Yochanan, Asei Bishvil Beni, Bishvil Banai, do for the sake of my children that Rish Lakish, my husband, shouldn't pass away, that they should have a father. Amar Allah, he says to her, Azva Yisaymech Ani Achaya. Leave the Yisaymim, don't worry about them, I will provide them sustenance. So she cried further and said, Asay B'shvil Almanusi, do for my sake, that I shouldn't be an almana, that Rish Lakish shouldn't pass away. Amar Allah, he says to her, V'almanusech alai tiftechu. And the almana, you can rely on me, I'll take care of you. And he did not daven for Rish Lakish to be healed. He didn't accept any mechila. Noch nafshid Reb Shimon ben Lakish. And Rish Lakish passed away. And then later on, after Rish Lakish passed away, Rabbi Yochanan was very pained by this. He regretted the fact that he caused his death. So Rabbi Yochanan had tremendous pain about this. Tuva. Huh? Rabbi Yochanan. Rish Lakish, which is Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, that was his full name. So Rabbi Yochanan had tremendous pain from this. So the Rabbanon then said, Man lezel liyasve ledaite. Who's going to go and calm him down? That he should have some other student or colleague to discuss Torah with, like he did with Rish Lakish. So they said, Nezel Rabbi Elazar ben Pedas. Let Rabbi Elazar ben Pedas go, the Mechaded and Shmai to say, because he has his things in the subjects in Torah that he says are very sharp. Azali went Yosef Kamei. He sat in front of Rabbi Yochanan. Kol milsada va'amar Rabbi Yochanan. Every matter, every halacha that Rabbi Yochanan said, Amalei Tani the Messiah lach. Rabbi Elazar ben Pedas brought a braisa as a proof to prove what Rabbi Yochanan said is true. So Rabbi Yochanan commented about this. Ad kebar lakisha. You think that you are as good and it could be a replacement for Rish Lakish? Bar lakisha, which is Rish Lakish, ki hava mina milsa. When I would say a halacha, hava makshli esren v'arba kushyasa. He asked me 24 questions. Umafriknele esren v'arba pruki, and I gave him 24 answers. Umemele rav cheshmaita, and that from this discussion that I had with Rish Lakish, where he challenged me so much, so brought out the clarity of the idea. is Tana the Messiah's law. And you, every halacha that I teach you, you bring me a proof to what I'm saying. You think I don't know that what I say is right? I don't need you to come and give me these proofs. So Rabbi Yochanan could not calm down from what happened. That Reish Lakish passed away, and he tore his garments, and he cried, and he was saying, Heichi ad bar Lakisha, where are you, Reish Lakish? Heichi ad bar Lakisha, where are you, Reish Lakish? And he was screaming to such a degree, ad the shav daite minei, until he lost his mind. Bayu Rabbanon Rachme Alei, the Rabbanon begged mercy of Hashem on this, and V'noch Nafshe. And Rabbi Yochanan also passed away. Yeah, but it does say in Mefarshim that the history of Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, this is not something, they had many good years together. They passed away at a very old age. I think it says Reish Lakish was in his 90s, and Rabbi Yochanan was above the age of 100 years old. And this was how their life ended. It seems to be a very sad ending, but there must be some deeper pshat over here on what's going on between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. You see over here, Reish Lakish was the Baal Tshuva, and Rabbi Yochanan was the tzaddik. And many times in Chassidus it talks about the difference between these two kinds of avodas and the relative advantages of each one over the other. There's always that sort of competition, so to speak, in the two avodas of the Baal Tshuva and the tzaddik over here between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Okay, the Gemara now returns, that is, to the story of Rabbi Elazar bar Rab Shimon. As mentioned before, Rabbi Elazar bar Rab Shimon was the one that he caused this launderer to be killed and hung by the government, and he had a lot of pain about this. Here the Gemara continues the story. And even after he made a test to see that what he did was right and he's still a tzaddik, but still, even after all of this, he still was upset about what he did. Nevertheless, Loi samach Rabbi Elazar bar Rab Shimon adaite. He still did not rely on his judgment, and therefore kibul alei yisuri. He accepted upon himself a lot of pain, and the pain that he had physically was to such a degree that be'orta at night when he would go to sleep, havamaichile shitten nimti. He had 60 sheets that he had to sleep on that got soaked with blood. Letzafre, in the morning, nagdimi to say, they took out from beneath him shitten mishichli the dama v'kiba, 60 buckets or pails of blood and pus. That's how much suffering he had physically in his body. And lamachar, tomorrow, or the next day, Abdullah de Bisu, his wife would prepare for him shitten money lafta, 60 portions of lafta, which is some kind of dish that's made from figs, and va'achalu, and he would eat them a body, and that this would heal him. His wife did not allow him to go out to learn in the Bismedrash with all the Chachamim, so the Chachamim should not push him around because his body was so sensitive. But at night, before he would go to sleep, Amaluhu, he would say to his body, he would say to the pain and suffering that came upon him, Achai v'reyai, my brothers, my friends, bo, come. He would invite this suffering upon his body for the kapara that he wanted to have. But then in the morning, Amalu, he would say to it, Zilo, leave, because if he will have this pain and suffering, it will be mevatlim from learning Torah. So he had absolute control over his body. Yom Echad, one day, Shama de Bisu, his wife, hears how he's inviting this pain and suffering to him when he goes to sleep. So Amrale, she says to him, At kamaisis lahu yilavach, you're bringing this pain and suffering upon yourself. Kilisa mamashal beis abba, and you're using up all of the money that I brought into the marriage from my father's house because you had to spend all this money to prepare all the food for him to heal him. Imrade, she rebelled against him. Ozla lebeis nasha, she went back to her father's house. Now, so after this happened, so he didn't have his wife anymore to take care of him. So the Eibusher brought something that he had to take care of him. Sliku v'asu came up and came to him. Hanoch shitins funoi, 60 of these people that were traveling over the sea. And Ailule shitten avdi, they brought to him 60 slaves. Kinekiti shitten arnaki, and these 60 slaves came to help him, and they had 60 wallets full of money in it. And now Rashi brings that where did they come from? What happened was when they were on the sea and there was a big storm, and they wanted to get saved from the storm. They davened to the Eibusher that in the schos of Rabbi Elazar bar Rab Shimon we should be saved. And they got saved. So after they got saved, they came to pay their dues to Rabbi Elazar bar Rab Shimon that they got paid in his chos. And then Ba'avdulay, they prepared for him shitten money lafta, 60 portions of this lafta, the fig, the dish from figs that would heal him, v'achaluhu, and he ate from it. Yom Echad, one day, Amrullah lebrata, his wife that was by her parents says to his daughter, Zilu baki bavuch, go and see what's going on, find out what's the condition of your father. Ma'ika Ovid, what is he doing here now? Asya, his daughter, comes back to the mother, Amar Allah, and he says to the mother, Zili, Amar Allah, that is Rabbi Elazar ben Rab Shimon, says to the daughter, Zili Amri le'imech, go tell your mother, Shalanu gadol mishalahem. Our riches, the money that I have to take care of myself is more than what you have by your father. And Karaya Nafshay, he read upon himself the pasuk that says, Haisa kaniya seicher mimerchak tavi lachma, that the seicher that came from the boats, the day from far, brought the food, the bread that he needed, that as it says here, that these people that came and helped him. So then what happened? Achol v'shasi, he ate and he drank a body and he got healthy. And nafach lebei madrasha, now his wife wasn't there to stop him from going out, so he went out to the shul. Now, when Rabbi Elazar ben Rab Shimon finally, after a while, showed up in shul, asla kamei shitten mani dama. So they brought to him 60 women had a shaila about the stains of blood, and they needed to know whether this blood, whether they are allowed to be with their husbands or not. So they brought them these 60 different stains that he had to inspect. And he paskined that they're all pure. So now, after he paskined this, that all 60 are pure, have a kamerani rabbanon. So the rabbanon were doubtful about this, and they were saying about him that this can't be true, that all of them are pure. V'amri, and they said, Salka daitach, do you think lesbu chat safik, is there not one of these stains of blood that could be that there's a doubt, and therefore he should have been stringent about this? Amaluhu, he said to the chachamim, im kamaisiyu, if like what I paskined is right, yiyu kulam schorim, all these women should give birth to boys. Vim lav, and if it's not true, tehene keva achas b'neim, there should be one keva amongst them. It turned out he was right, because hayu kulam schorim, they all gave birth to boys, schorim. V'asikulu Rabbi Elazar al Shmei, and they all named the babies that were born. They gave them the name Rabbi Elazar like himself. So Tanya Nebraisa, we learned about this. Amar Rebbe. Rebbe said, "Kama pirya v'ribya bitla risha zu misrael." How much pirya v'ribya? How much birth of children did this risha take away from Yidden? So Rashi, the first pshat Rashi says is that the fact that Rabbi Elazar ben Rab Shimon was absent in Bismedish for such a long period of time, so he couldn't paskin. He had the koyach to paskin, to be lenient, to show how all these blood that these women saw are tahar and they're able to be with their husbands, and therefore because of this, so what's the risha? The government that forced him to go and catch the ganovim, and as a result, he brought this pain upon himself, and therefore he was absent of the Bismedish. Or the other pshat is the risha goes on his wife that was wicked, that did not allow him to go to the Beis Medrash. So because of this, he didn't paskin, and therefore it held back women from having babies. When it came the time for Rabbi Elazar Rab Shimon to pass away, Amalal the Bisu, he says to his wife, Yadaine b'de Rabbanon, I know that there are those amongst the Rabbanon that is sichi alai, they're very angry at me, and therefore v'leimaske b'shaper, they're not going to take care of me and bury me properly. And this is because he was the one that informed on many of these ganovim that he gave over to the government, and said they were from family members of these chachamim, and they know they're not going to treat me properly. So Eignin Balisai, you should lie me down in the attic, and don't bury me. Just let me lie there in the attic. You shouldn't be worried about me. Don't be afraid. Now this is something which is very unusual, because there's a mitzvah of kfura you have to bury, and there's a din of bizayin abimeis, you're not allowed to delay even the burial of a person. But over here in this case, the Mashaya discusses this and says that over here he said it's the honor. My honor is that I should not be buried, but you should leave me in the attic. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani ishtoyli imei Rav Yonasan. So Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani says that the mother of Rav Yonasan said over to me the ishtoyli the bisu the Rabbi Elazar ben Rab Shimon, that she heard from the wife of Rabbi Elazar ben Rab Shimon that she put him there to lie in the attic. And leipachas mitmani sari v'leitfei me'esrim v'tartan shnin, not less than 18 years and not more than 22 years. Oignisei be'elisa, she had him over there. He was lying in the attic. And she said, Ki avasalikna, when I would go up to the attic, ma'aninele b'mazia, I would look at his ears, and ki mishtamta binisa minei, when a hair was pulled out from his body, havasadama, blood would come out of his body. In other words, his body remained 100% fresh, like it was in the day that he passed away. Yom echad, one day, chazoi richasha the kanafik muneh, she saw a worm crawling out of his ear. So Chalish Datoi, she became very, very upset about this, and she thought that maybe this is a sign that now his body worms will come and eat up his body. So then Rab Shimon appeared to her in a dream. She's recounting this. He appeared to me in a dream. Amar li, and he said to me, Loi midihu. This is not. Don't worry about this. It's not something that now shows that my body there'll be worms in my body. But rather, the only reason that this happened was because Yom Echad, one day, Shami b'zilusa d'tzurbim rabbanan. I heard that someone said something which was an embarrassment for a Talmud Chacham. V'loi machai k'debayli, li, and I did not protest against that as I should have, and that's why this happened to me today. Now, while he was lying there in the attic, if there were two people that had an argument and they came to settle their argument for judgment, to settle their argument, they would stand at the door of his house. Omar Mar Milse, one of them said his argument, and Omar Milse, and the other one said his argument. And the voice would come out from the aliyah where Rab Lazar Rab Shimon was, and he said, Ish plani yata chayiv, so and so you are chayiv, and Ish plani yata zakay, and so you're zakay, you're potter. Yom Echad, one day, have a convinced the biso ba'adish vivasa. So Rab Lazar Rab Shimon's wife had an argument with a neighbor. Amr Allah. So the neighbor comments to Rab Lazar Rab Shimon's wife, Tehei kebaila, you should be like your husband, that was not buried. So Amri Rabbanan, when the Rabbanan heard this, they said, Kula hai, that this is ready to such an extent that everybody's talking about the fact that Rab Lazar Rab Shimon is lying in the attic and he was never buried, and it becomes an embarrassment. La v'irachara. It's not the right thing. It's not to leave him there unburied. Ikadamri, some say that the reason why finally he got buried is for another reason. Because Rab Shimon Yochai is chazilu b'cham. Rab Shimon Yochai himself came in a dream to the Chachamim, and Amalu, he said to them, Pereida achas yeshli b'nechem, I have one fledgling, my son here, that's lying amongst you, v'yatem reitzim la'avia etzli, and you don't want to come and bring him and bury him near me. So then Azul Rabbanan la'asukibei, the Rabbanan came and they wanted to remove him from the attic to go and bury him. But le'shavku b'nei achbaraya, the people b'nei achbaraya, which was over there, then near that, by that city, they did not want to allow him to remove his body from the attic. Why? Because the Choshani Da'avanayim, Rabbi Lazar Rab Shimon Be'elisa, all this time, Rabbi Lazar Rab Shimon was lying there in the attic, no wild beast ever entered into their city, so they felt they were protected by him. So Yom Echad, it was one day, and this was Maila Yom Kippurim Ava, was Erev Yom Kippur, Havatridin. The people of the city were very busy. Shadru Rabbanan Lebnei Biri. So the Rabbanan sent to the people of Biri, which was also nearby, and they went Vasku la'arse v'amtuyu lema'arte davur. They went up and they took the bed with his body and they brought him to the cave where Rab Shimon Mechai is buried in Miran. Ashkachua, they came there to the cave. They found la'achna, that there was a snake. The Hadra Lele Marta that was encircling the cave, and they couldn't enter to bury him inside. Amrullah, they said to the snake, Achna, Achna, the snake, Peschi, Picha, open your mouth, released it, the tail was in its mouth, and that's how it was locking it closed. Open your mouth, V'yikonis ben Eitzelav, and let the son go and be buried near the father. Pasach Luhu, the snake opened up the cave and allowed them to bury Rab Lazar Rab Shimon. Now after this, Shalach Rebbe, after Rab Lazar Rab Shimon was finally buried, so now Rebbe sent Ledabe Bishtoy to speak to the wife of Rab Lazar Rab Shimon that she should come and marry him instead. Shalchalei, she sent back a message to Rebbe, Keli, shenishtamish by Kaidish, a vessel that was used by such a holy person, ishtamish by Chol, should not be used by you, Rebbe, which is mundane. Rebbe himself was Kaidish Kadosh. Rebbe himself, it says about him how holy he was. He actually, Rebbe had the nickname of Rabbeinu HaKadosh, but nevertheless she uses this expression in relation to her husband, Rabbi Lazar Rab Shimon. And then she added, Taman Omrin, over here in Eretz Yisrael, they say, Ba'asar, the Mari Beisa Talizaine, in a place or in the hook where the owner, the master of the home, hangs his weapons, Kolbe Raye, Kol Setala. So now a simple shepherd should come and hang his baskets on this. So it says, you can't use me. Why? You can't be. I'm not going to be your wife after I was married to Rab Lazar Rab Shimon. Shalach la.
They want to marry her
again.
Rabbi want to marry her.
Yeah.
Wasn't married to her?
Apparently not. Shalach la. So Rebbe sent back a message to her. He the b'Torah gadol mimeni. Yes, it's true that regarding learning Torah he was greater than me. I will b'maisim tovim mi gadol mimeni. But regarding good deeds, was he greater than me? So she sent back a message to Rebbe, regarding Taita that you say that he was greater than you, that I don't know. If you say so, then I guess that's true. But the Maisim, Yadaina, I can tell you regarding his behavior, his good deeds, that I can tell you that he was greater than you. Because I can tell you about the great pain and suffering that he accepted upon himself, as the Gemara described before. I heard the Gemara says, "B'Taita Maihi." Where do we see that he was greater than Rebbe in learning Taita? So, because the Chavi Yasvi Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Rabbi Shua ben Karcha Asafsali. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, which was the father of Rebbe, and Rabbi Shua ben Karcha, they were both sitting in the Beis Medrash on a bench. Yasvi Kamayu, Rabbi Lazar ben Rabbi Shimon, Rebbe. So both Rabbi Lazar ben Rabbi Shimon and Rebbe was sitting on the ground. And while they were sitting there on the ground, Makshu or Mefarki, they would ask and give answers. They were the ones that were discussing and giving the explanations for all the halachas that were taught. So Amri, the Chachamim and the Beis Medrash that were all sitting on benches said, Meimei and Onushaisen, we drink the waters of these two great Chachamim that are sitting here on the ground. Them Yeshum al Gabi Karka, and they sit on the ground. So Avdullahu Safsali, that's they made for them benches that they should sit on a bench. Askinu, they brought them up to sit on a bench. Like the other Chachamim. Oh, and Rab Shimon Gamliel, so Rab Shimon Gamliel, the father of Rebbe, said, I have one fledgling amongst you. This is my son, Rebbe. You want me to lose him? Because he was afraid, as Rashi said, of an iron hara, now that he sits on a bench. So they put Rebbe back down to sit on the ground. Amalan Rabbi Shua ben Karcha. So Rabbi Shua ben Karcha now said, Mishi Yeshle Av Yichya, the one that has a father. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel is concerned about his son, that he shouldn't have a nine hara. Mishi Ein Av Yamos, and Rabbi Lazar ben Rabbi Shimon, his father, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, passed away already, so he does not have a father to care for him, that is. So he should pass away. So Achsu Namil Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon. So they also put Rabbi Lazar ben Rabbi Shimon back to sit on the ground. But after that happened, though, Cholash Daite, Rabbi Lazar ben Rabbi Shimon felt bad about the fact that he was sitting on the bench, like the other Chachamim, and they told him to go back to sit on the ground. Amar, and Rabbi Lazar ben Rabbi Shimon said, Kachashvisu li kavasi, you consider Rebbe to be on the same level of learning as me, that you're putting me back on the ground like him? And the Gemara says, Adahu Yoima, until that day, Ki Avam Rebbe Milse, when Rebbe said halacha, have Messiah Rabbi Lazar ben Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Lazar ben Rabbi Shimon would say that you're right, and he would bring proofs to the halacha that he said. But Mikam Ve'elech, after this point, Ki Avam Rebbe Yeshli Lohashiv, when Rebbe would say, I have a question to ask on the halacha that was taught in the Beis Medrash, Amalei Rabbi Lazar ben Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Lazar ben Rabbi Shimon would argue with him and say, Kach v'kach yesh lecha lahashiv. This is the question that you have. Zui tshuvascha. This is the reason. This is the answer to you why your question is not a question at all. Hashtehe kaftana tshuvas chavilis. You're coming and asking these questions, these bundles of questions. Shem ben mamish. That there's nothing to the questions that you're asking. So Rabbi Lazar ben Rabbi Shimon showed his tremendous might that he had in Torah to argue with Rebbe. This is the story where we see how Rabbi Lazar ben Rabbi Shimon was much greater than Rebbe. So Rebbe felt bad about this, that Rabbi Lazar ben Rabbi Shimon was disproving everything he was saying. So he came and said this, and he said over to his father, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, what was happening. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel tells him, Bni, that is my son, don't feel bad. Shuhu Ari ben Ari, because he's the lion, the son of a lion. Va'ata, and you're very great, but Ari ben Shual, you're a lion, but you're the son of a fox. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel referring to himself, saying that I'm only a fox. And on this, the Gemara says, Rabbi, this is what Rabbi said, Shloisha anvesenenheim. There are three that are humble. And the following three were humble. Abba, my father, because of this that he said here, he referred to himself just as a fox. Let's just finish the Indian over here. And also, Ubenei Beseira, the children of the Benei Beseira. This is the children of Yehuda ben Beseira. The Gemara is soon going to bring what happened. V'Yonasan ben Shaul, and Yonasan, the son of Shaul HaMelech. So why were all these three humble? Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, humility of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel is Hadamara. We've just said that he referred to himself as a fox. Bnei Beseira, the children of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, the Omar Marcus, the master said, what happened was the children of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, they were the Nisim, they were the leaders amongst the Yidden in Eretz Yisrael. And then when Hillel came from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, so what happened was, Hashivu Beroish, they put him at the head, Duminul and Asi Alein, and they were humble enough to take Hillel and appoint him above themselves, that he should be the leader. And Yonasan ben Shaul, where do we see that Yonasan, the son of Shaul HaMelech, was humble? Because the Kamelele David, he said to David HaMelech, Va'ata timlech al Yisrael, you will be the one that will be the king over Yidden, Vani Eloch al Mishnah, and I'll be the second in command. He was humble enough to appoint David HaMelech as the king. But on the last two, the Gemara now asks, but Mimai, how do we know that this came from humility? Dilme, Yenisim ben Shaul, Chaza, the God of Alma, Basa David. Maybe the reason why he said to David HaMelech, you'll be the king, because he saw the people were following David HaMelech, so he had no choice in the matter. And similar, B'nai B'seira, the children of Yehuda ben B'seira, that they appointed Hillel to be the leader, Nami, maybe the reason is the Chaza Hillel, David Binayim. They saw that Hillel was greater. He knew how to learn Torah better than them, so therefore they appointed him to be the leader. Elos, therefore the Gemara concludes, Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, Vadei HaMesenhave. So we can say definitely regarding Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, because of the expression that he said that I'm the fox, that he's the one that we could definitely say about him that he was humble.